All right, so before we get started, I am going to butcher the agenda. So first of all, I would like to remove the Diversity Council presentation from the agenda for presentation and place it on the agenda for November 28th, which would be our next GPSC meeting under new business. We have way too much stuff to do tonight to give the Diversity Council presentation its full due. That, and probably by the 28th there'll be more to talk about for that. Second, I move to combine items A and B into one item, academic reorganization, as discussing these things separate, actually A and B under new business, into one item, academic reorganization, as discussing these things separately would be counterproductive. Items D and C will remain independent because they need to be discussed as separate items. So all in favor of the proposed changes to the agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Oh, good. All right, so the minutes are on the GPSC website. I know because I put them up some 15 minutes ago. They're there for your perusal. Moving onwards to old business. So graduate student responses to the straw man. So 4 weeks ago, I requested that all GPSC reps generate statements from their departments indicating the weaknesses, strengths, and any potential expansions to the Chancellor's straw man reorganization plan. So as of November 6th, GPSC has received responses from 8 departments, the School of Law, and the International Student Council on behalf of the international graduate students. These responses were compiled into a master document submitted to both provosts, the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and the Presidents of Faculty Senate and Graduate Council. The documents are also hosted on the GPSC website. That being said, I am reissuing the request for feedback from GPSC representatives in light of the recently updated FAQ from the Chancellor, and once again in advance of the release of a new draft of the straw man proposal, which is due November 17th. So once again, I would like GPSC representatives to review both the straw man proposal and the Chancellor's FAQ, which has been linked on the GPSC website, and evaluate both items in terms of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your given program. So where applicable, I would also like representatives to include a similar evaluation of the program change proposals, which are also hosted on the GPSC website. So as an aside, I would also like to thank all of the departments, the School of Law, and the International Student Council for their participation, and I have received several compliments on the thoroughness of the compiled responses. Any questions about that? As an aside, and this is actually more for the School of Law, none of the updates to the FAQ and the proposed reorganization have any actual effect on your unit, so you don't actually have to resubmit something. But for everybody else, the new change will have some kind of effect on your unit. It's up in the air as to what, so there is that. Item B, the resolution regarding the student activity fee. So our proposal to change the student activity fee was presented to undergraduate student government, who after some conversation drafted a mandate that mirrors the language of our proposal with exception to the amount allocated. So rather than allocate an additional $3.50 on top of the current per graduate student allocation, a compromise of 25% of the total $18.50 allocated to student government per student, regardless of academic rate, was reached. To be clear, GPSC would receive 25% of the total amount allocated to student government, as opposed to a percentage of the amount based on the graduate and professional student population. In terms of this year's budget, our annual allocation would be somewhere within the $84,000 range. To be clear, and Diana can correct me if I'm wrong, this is upwards of $12,000 more than we have had in the past 4 or 5 years. Moreover, this enables GPSC to increase its annual allocation independent of an increase in graduate student enrollment at the institution. Put simply, if the total enrollment of the university increases, so does the total amount allocated to GPSC. Essentially, this compromise allows for an ongoing increase in the GPSC student activity fee allocation that can be implemented immediately for the spring semester, which is important due to the need to fund graduate and professional student development or professional development through the summer. To that end, I motion to amend the previously passed resolution to reflect the new language, specifically the final, therefore be it resolved, to read, therefore be it resolved that the Graduate and Professional Student Council recommends that the, Graduate and Professional Student Council be allocated the amount of 25% of the total student activity fee allocation to student government. Is there any discussion on this?
I'm just going to do a slow clap into a large clap. Yeah, that's my comment.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your work on that. I mean, it really is a huge deal, and it gives us a lot of great opportunities moving forward. So appreciate your work, and also just, the considerations that were made by USG as well.
To be clear, we don't actually have to wait for USG to do anything. They passed their mandate to adjust this allocation. So the only thing we need to do is approve the motion to change our resolution and then tell Lori Stetler.
Yep. I saw Lori today. She's just like, let's get some on my desk. Let's meet.
So, all in favor of what?
If there's no comments or questions, I'll second the motion
thank
so that
you.
we can vote on
If I
it.
have a question just about it in general, do I ask that now or after we approve?
You can ask it now.
Does this increase the limit that we can ask for from GPSC, or no, it just means that there's more?
That would be an internal fee allocation board decision, and if they want to change the amount that graduate students can request in travel and professional development support, that is independent of this resolution. The resolution only addresses the amount of money we get from the university. The amount of money we give, again, is a policy decision that the relevant committee would have to decide.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, so motion has been seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. You can go tell Lori.
All right.
Sweet. New business, and this is going to be the longest part of the meeting, so buckle up. All right. So, like I said, items A and B are going to be combined into one gigantic report because I've had 2 weeks to deal with this administrative nightmare. All right, so as mentioned in old business, the program change proposals are all hosted on the GPSC website. You can download them at your leisure. Where program changes are concerned, GPSC will have voting input on the proposed changes through its representatives on Graduate Council when these changes reach the Graduate Council. However, this does not prevent GPSC from exercising its policy-granted authority under Board of Trustees Policy 3F3 to provide student input on these program proposals. That being said, I recognize that these program proposals are unique to the main campus in the School of Medicine and have no nominal effect on the School of Law, so I'm going to ask the reps from the School of Law to bear with me as we move through some of the more pertinent effects. So, the main effect of the program change proposals, as indicated by every single one, is to combine programs into divisions and nest divisions under schools. Doing so, as indicated by the Chancellor's FAQ, requires the redrafting of the operating papers for colleges, schools, and departments to reflect the proposed changes. One thing that should be clear, the Chancellor can move a unit, currently defined as a department, to another academic unit without going through the Article 9 process. Elimination of departments is not a precondition of moving units around, however, the restructuring is. So this leads to a conflict. On the one hand, the administration insists that the preconditions for reorganization, specifically the elimination of departments and creation of divisions, requires the elimination of chairs. Moreover, the administration claims that departments and divisions, or departments and schools, cannot simultaneously exist under the existing university policy. On the other hand, the Faculty Association disagrees with this interpretation and believes that departments and divisions, or departments and schools, may exist simultaneously. So on this point, I need to add some clarity. As of today, neither the Faculty Senate, nor the Faculty Association, nor the administration, nor the Graduate Council have provided language supporting either claim. To be clear, and because the press is in the room, this is not me disparaging our faculty and administration. This is a statement of fact. No one, to my knowledge, has provided contractual or policy-based justification for their arguments. So that, in my view, is unacceptable, especially if I'm going to ask all of you to evaluate the effects of these changes on the university. So to that end, I've done the research. The university currently has several units labeled schools, and schools are articulated in the Faculty Association contract. It is as of yet unclear if the school designation in the FA contract is a basic academic unit, like a department, but likely not. But I will pass over that for the moment. To draw upon the example provided by the Chancellor, the School of Allied Health, the school designation seems to be purely nominal. In the operating papers of the School of Allied Health, lists the school as a department. Specifically, the operating paper listed on the School of Allied Health website titles the school as, quote, the Department of Healthcare Professions. This department has a chair, but it also has program directors who are responsible for the programs within the department. To this end, while the school is presented as such, administratively, it is a department with multiple programs headed by directors who are not administrators. To be clear, the school has a chair. Moreover, individual programs may have operating papers which presumably grant faculty within the program authority over curricular offerings and program-related decisions. To that end, curricular control remains within the given program and is not subject to committee approval by the entire school. That being said, there are two caveats to this presentation. First, I have not been able to acquire the operating papers for the individual programs within the School of Allied Health, so I cannot speak with absolute certainty to the claims made. Second, the operating paper of the School of Allied Health indicates that this structure is in response to accreditation needs, which is to say that it may not be suitable for all academic units. So up to this point, it appears that school and department are designations and are coextensive in some senses, and having one does not preclude another. However, to provide additional certainty, I will be submitting a FOIA request for all of the operating papers of all units labeled schools and the academic degree programs within them, regardless of designation, to determine the truth of the matter where the claims and counterclaims of the administration and other constituency groups are concerned. To be absolutely clear, this is not the responsibility of GPSC, and I'm only undertaking this task because, quite frankly, I'm tired of not being able to provide accurate information to the graduate and professional student body, specifically as to the disposition of our programs under this plan. Now, if anybody wants to help me out with that, I'm perfectly willing to farm it out to other people, but that's neither here nor there. So, the FAQ is not much better about this. As part of the reorganization, the plan calls for the redrafting of departmental and the drafting of school operating papers, which are to outline the means of representation for divisions within the new academic structure. Additionally, these new operating papers are to outline the composition and the function of the curriculum committee, which is the body that will have oversight over curricular and programmatic changes at the school level. As an aside, this structure currently exists in the School of Social Work, but that's kind of an edge case because it's not replacing a whole bunch of departments. So, regardless of the composition of the curriculum committee, individual academic programs will lose their autonomy and their authority over the curriculum. Faculty will still own the curriculum insofar as they can make changes to the curriculum, but that ownership will no longer rest with the departments. Put simply, there will be a wholesale loss of institutional authority below the school level. Moreover, the issue is less about the elimination of departments and the redrafting of operating papers to strip institutional authority for programs, but the failure of the Chancellor to provide anyone with a choice. Put another way, the elimination of departments is being treated as a non-negotiable element of the reorganization. While the Chancellor is open to input and feedback, he is unwilling to incorporate or consider any feedback where the elimination of departments is concerned. While this is not specific to GPSC, as the Chancellor has refused to consider input from other constituency groups on this matter, the FAQ does not reference GPSC or USG for this matter as an official mechanism for feedback in the same way that Faculty Senate and Graduate Council are. That is to say, we as a constituency body are not being treated as a full participant in the organization of the institution beyond those elements that are not or that are non-negotiable, including the elimination of graduate students as records, or as instructors of record. Now, M asked me what the limitations of our authority is where all of this is concerned. GPSC's authority, whether or not Graduate Council or Faculty Senate like it, is functionally identical. The only difference is that we are not faculty and we do not own the curriculum, so we have no say in curricular decisions except where we are granted voting representation on committees, core curriculum advisory committee, graduate councils, ed policies committee, and so on. Theoretically, this body could not vote on curricular control, but neither can the faculty senate because that rests with the faculty in a department. So, M, to answer your question, the limits of our authority are the same limits granted to faculty senate. They just don't like telling us that. Well, not they. The administration does not like telling us that because if we were to exercise that full authority, it would become problematic. To be clear, what this means is insofar as faculty senate can vote no confidence in a chancellor, so can we. Insofar as faculty senate can vote no confidence in a particular administrative decision, so can we. This is just not something we tend to exercise. I'm not saying we should, but it's an option. It is the nuclear option, as it were. So that being said, in terms of what we can do about all this, item C on your agenda is one way of responding to one of the elements articulated above, and item D has been included on our agenda to begin the process of developing responses to the above situation. Additionally, I intend to reach out to President Dunn and Vice President for Academic Affairs, William Bradley Caldwell, to gauge responses that GPSC can make to the proposed reorganization at the system level. To be clear, like Faculty Senate and other constituency bodies, much of what GPSC can do is advisory. However, our advisory position is granted by Board of Trustees policy, and apparently, when need arises, GPSC can meet with the president. Usually this is by request of the president, but I see no reason why GPSC cannot make that request on its own. Having dealt with items A and B under new business, are there any questions? Yeah.
What constitutes an emergency?
Say what?
What constitutes an emergency?
So,
Not the full definition, but in this sense.
in this sense, well, I mean, the elimination of graduate students as instructors of record would constitute a pretty big emergency in my view, but nominally, say the declaration of a fiscal emergency by the sitting chancellor would grant GPSC particular powers to summon the chancellor in for a Q&A session. We did that last semester. If the president had a question about the performance of the chancellor, he could ask us to provide input on it. On the other hand, the way that I've interpreted Board of Trustees policy where constituency bodies is concerned is if we have a particular concern about a violation of Board of Trustees policy by an administrator, we can elevate that to the relevant office. That would theoretically be Brad Caldwell. So we could reach out to him and say, hey, we don't feel that the administration is fulfilling their functions under this policy. We would like to lodge a complaint and engage in particular remedies, but that's literally going over the chancellor's head. Also, we can vote no confidence in pretty much any decision he makes. And under the same Board of Trustees policy that allows us to provide input or recognizes us as the designated body for student input, the chancellor would have to take seriously that vote of no confidence. And were he to disregard it, theoretically he's in violation of Board of Trustees policies. But again, that's the nuclear option.
Would a vote of no confidence do?
It would indicate to the Board of Trustees and the rest of the university that GPSC and by extension the graduate student body at the institution has no confidence in the chancellor's or no confidence in whatever it is we're voting on. typically these are done in response to a given appointment. So you would vote no confidence in the chancellor, and therefore we would be expressing that we have no confidence in the chancellor to accomplish or to do the job. When we do it in response to a plan or a policy that basically says, we don't believe this policy will accomplish any of the aims set for it, and this is the position of the graduate student body. So it basically says we don't think this will do what it's supposed to do, and we don't agree with it.
Does that require a resolution or someone just a motion and be like, we should have a vote of no confidence?
It doesn't require a resolution, and I did look at the Robert's rules on this before I started talking about it. It doesn't require a resolution, but a vote of no confidence would, by professional courtesy, require a document outlining why we're voting no confidence. So it's not simply somebody makes a motion and then we affirm it. It's somebody makes a motion, we affirm it, and we provide a chapter and verse as to why we made the motion and what we're doing. Hence the nuclear option. Yes?
So I've heard representatives of the faculty association say that they can slow down the entire process by a matter of up to 30 days. I haven't heard concretely, one, if they have, and two, if they have, what that timeline is or where we're at in that 30-day timeline.
So the 90 days is a consequence of Article 9. So under Article 9, any program change requires a 90-day process of consideration back and forth. There's a whole bunch of stuff under it. That clock started Monday and it runs through the weekend. So we're, Tuesday, right? 89 days right now. The Article 9 process can slow that down by 30 days if there's a need or a need expressed by the faculty association to extend the time for consideration or presentation of counter proposals. That, to my knowledge, the faculty association has not invoked that part of Article 9. When I find out, I will let you know, but I don't. They haven't. Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? All right, that's the bad news for the combination of item A and B under new business. Moving on to item C, resolution regarding departmental elimination. So this resolution is a modified version of a resolution that passed in Faculty Senate after 2.5 hours of debate. And in light of that, this is why I didn't provide it to you earlier, because I wanted to hear what Faculty Senate had to say about the resolution as it existed before presenting it to you, so that I could address any specific concerns, namely debate centered on the last, therefore be it resolved, which if you flip it over, be it further resolved that in this context it would be the Faculty Senate recommends that all university stakeholders be encouraged to allow it, or be encouraged and allowed to pursue all productive proposals for change, including those that retain academic departments. So there were some members of the faculty who interpreted to that last, be it further resolved, to preclude the possibility of departmental eliminations, which was not in effect what the resolution was intended to do. There was also additional conversation about what the proposal or what the proposed reorganization was actually intended to do, whether it was to force a redrafting of operating papers or to eliminate chairs as administrators or to strip faculty control over curriculum, so on and so forth. That took 2.5 hours. Some of these elements are not germane to us, but as per our operating procedures, I will proceed to read the resolution, which you guys have been provided copies of, so bear with me. All right, so whereas the Graduate and Professional Student Council, GPSC, is the recognized constituency body or constituency of graduate and professional students at Southern Illinois University Carbondale, SIUC, under Board of Trustees Policy 3F3, and whereas Board of Trustees Policy 3F3 states, student constituency body shall be the official organization designated to represent students in matters pertaining to student welfare, student activities, student participation in campus affairs, student participation in institutional planning and administration, and student opinion, and whereas GPSC is committed to change, including structural change, that enhances the quality of education for undergraduate and graduate students, furthers the mission of the institution, and specifically addresses long-standing issues in graduate education at this institution. And whereas graduate students are uniquely positioned to understand the impact of reorganization upon graduate education, provide valuable insight into proposed academic reorganization designed to enhance graduate education, and indicate areas of needs from a student perspective. And whereas departments are based on faculty expertise and research foci devoted to the academic disciplines and majors pursued by students, and designed to provide institutional and disciplinary stability to the diversity of programs suited to a diverse student body. And whereas graduate and professional students have indicated a concern over the loss of institutional identity, disciplinary autonomy, and institutional support structures that accompany the administrative structure of departments. And whereas potential graduate and professional students will doubt the stability of programs lacking the institutional status of departments and question the stability of a university that appears to lack the resources to support departments. And whereas graduate and professional students have reported an unwillingness to attend or recommend enrollment in an institution with the proposed academic structure. And whereas the proposed dissolution of every department on campus has caused avoidable confusion and worry among graduate and professional students about the future of their degree programs. And whereas the elimination of academic departments is a matter of institutional planning and administration and is therefore subject to the provision of student input through GPSC. And whereas principles of shared governance and academic freedom are threatened when a unilateral reorganization eliminates academic units across the board without regard to the content or mission of the unit with no opportunity for substantive deliberation or debate or the provision of graduate and professional student input. And whereas the Chancellor has refused to provide empirical evidence in support of the efficacy of the proposal, the potential benefits of the proposal, or the institutional problems, including enrollment, retention, and recruitment remedied by the proposal beyond his personal philosophy. And whereas the Chancellor has refused to provide empirical evidence in support of unilateral elimination of departments as beneficial across all academic disciplines. And whereas the Chancellor has provided the example of Dartmouth as an example of successful implementation of his proposal, and whereas Dartmouth retains academic departments in all areas with exception to the Thayer School of Engineering, and therefore does not provide support for his claim, and there's missing an and there, therefore be it resolved that the Graduate and Professional Student Council opposes any proposal that recommends elimination of all academic departments on campus, and be it further resolved that the Graduate and Professional Student Council recommends that all university stakeholders be encouraged and allowed to pursue all productive proposals for change, including those that retain academic departments. I'm open to friendly amendments.
I think just because you've done so much work to prove that there is no, in fact, the empirical evidence is against him, that we should add a whereas that says something along the lines of, according to Jonathan's research, there is no empirical evidence that this will work.
I reject said amendment.
Seriously.
Should we add the and? That you were gonna-
Yeah.
Well, actually, that was a
Yeah, it was a
misreading
mistake.
on my part. It's
Yeah.
right before the therefore be it resolved. There's no need for an and.
Okay.
Other amendments? Okay, so as per our operating procedures, this would be the first reading of said resolution, unless of course we suspend the rules for the purposes of immediately voting to approve the resolution. The second reading of the resolution will occur at our next meeting, unless of course we want to suspend the rules and immediately vote on the resolution. But
Ron wants to.
Okay. Hearing no such motion, this serves as the first reading of the resolution. We will have our second reading at the November 28th meeting of GPSC. All right, where are we on the fun agenda? Oh, yes, here we go. Item D, graduate students as instructors of record. Whoopee. Okie dokie. So, put simply, this is yet another thing the Chancellor refuses to negotiate on. So, according to information provided by GAU, close to 50% of the GAs on campus are listed as instructors of record. The Chancellor's plan to eliminate these positions in favor of guided mentorship programs would, according to Provost Dalala and others, result in the inability to offer courses previously covered by instructors of record if the affected unit could not hire NTTs or get faculty to cover these courses. So basically, if we're not doing it and they can't find an NTT or a faculty member to do it, course won't be offered. This is not idle rumor. The memo authorizing the release of GA funds makes clear that deans may, and I quote, provisionally plan under the presumption that their fiscal year 2019 GA budget will be at the same level as their final fiscal year 18 GA budget, with the understanding that some adjustments to the budget might be required in order to staff courses formerly taught independently by GAs. Put another way, while deans are authorized to write contracts for GAs, and this includes year-long appointments for international students, deans are being advised to anticipate changes to their budgets due to the loss of courses formerly taught by GAs as instructors of record. Finally, I would also like to add that this is not a COLA or humanities-specific problem. 17% of the instructors to be affected are located in the STEM fields, and 14% of the instructors of record are located in the College of Education. So, right there. It's not just the humanities that are going to feel this one. So today, Faculty Senate moved to approve the proposal of a joint committee between Graduate Council and Faculty Senate to address the instructor of record issue. The Faculty Senate will most likely speak to this in the Graduate Council Executive Committee meeting this Thursday or via email. GAU is also considering ways to respond to the Chancellor's proposal, and it is my hope that GPSC will collaborate with the above constituency bodies. So as for what GPSC can do, we have some options here. So we can propose a resolution from the floor of Graduate Council to address the instructor of record issue. This is something that I used to do all the time in Grad Council, but it's something that we haven't done yet because there hasn't really been a need, but this is a thing we can do. I would like to remind this body that generally Graduate Council votes in approval of resolutions proposed by GPSC from the floor. This one might be a little bit contentious, but we've gotten other contentious resolutions approved. The other thing we can do is the nuclear option, which is to engage in a vote of no confidence in the proposed reorganization, so long as it includes the elimination of graduate students as instructors of record. This would basically be us telling the university as a whole and the system that the plan is shit and we don't want it. The other thing is GPSC can draft a resolution itself, but you know. So, I'm open to suggestions. The one thing we can do is wait for Faculty Senate and Grad Council to form their joint committee, but this is the way that this works. The suggestion was made in Faculty Senate's executive today, which will probably be communicated to Grad Council executive, and then the proposal will go to Grad Council at its next body meeting, where they will vote or something to decide to form a joint committee with Faculty Senate, which will then go back to Faculty Senate at their December 8th meeting, where they will decide who gets to sit on the committee. So chances are this committee wouldn't get off the ground and running unless Faculty Senate and Grad Council decided to accelerate their processes until next semester. So if we wanted to wait for Faculty Senate and Grad Council to come up with their own committee and start addressing this, the earliest without suspension of their rules that this could get done would be the beginning of next semester. So there's that.
How does that work with the 90 days thing?
Because the elimination of graduate students as instructors of record is not tied to the proposed reorganization, the Article 9 90 days does not apply here. So this is not a decision that is part of the reorganization, and the Chancellor has been extraordinarily clear about that, because I figure if it was, he would run into all kinds of weird problems. So everywhere that this decision has been outlined, it has been outlined as not part of the proposed reorganization. So it's independent of the reorganization, which is to say, we can do whatever we want about this, independent of anything we do with regards to the reorganization. So theoretically, if we wanted to, we could generate a pile of votes of no confidence on each element of his proposed Vision 2025 plan, but that I don't think would be an effective use of GPSC's institutional authority.
So that's why you want it in one?
I mean, if we were to do that, we would probably have to be one.
Okay.
And it would be not specific to the academic reorganization, but to the entire Vision 2025 outline. So we reject his Vision 2025 proposal in its entirety.
So just for clarification though, he can theoretically get rid of instructors of record sooner than the reorganization happens. When can that go into effect?
That cannot go into effect until fall 2019, because the current instructors of record are already under contract, and they are already listed as instructors of record. And if he tried to do something to it, he'd be in violation of the GAU contract, and that is wow. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a thing that would go into effect after May of 2018, and it says as much on the FAQ.
Fall 2018 or fall 2019?
19, because fall 2018 is now. Or wait, no, it's not.
No.
It's been a long time. Next fall is when it could go into effect.
So you're saying that you want to reject his plan?
I'm not saying that I want to, I'm saying it is an option. We can do other things like draft resolutions indicating the will of GPSC with regards to individual elements, which is what other constituency groups are doing. So Faculty Senate drafted a resolution rejecting the elimination of departments wholesale. I expect Graduate Council will have some conversation about that at their executive, and a resolution might come from Graduate Council recommending the same thing. The only reason I put the whole no confidence thing on the table is because it's literally the ultimate option. If we go through the process of generating resolutions, statements, advocating within committees, things like that, and we're still not being listened to, that's like the last argument of constituency bodies.
Okay. Well, I think that as far as the law school is concerned, that, I mean, as future attorneys, that we like to act in a diplomatic manner, and that we would not be for rejecting the entire plan, because that plan does involve the law school. Whereas you had previously stated that there are some matters that don't involve us, but those matters do. And I'm not sure that as a collective body that we would be for rejecting the entire plan.
That's perfectly fine. To be clear, I would not advocate the use of a vote of no confidence at this point in time, but I would be remiss in my responsibilities as president of GPSC not to let you guys know what the ultimate options are, or what all available options for addressing this issue are. Because, like I said, a vote of no confidence in anything is the last argument of constituency bodies. There's no more negotiation. After that, we've basically said, no, we don't want it. We'll never be in favor for it unless we draft it, particularly to say, with language that says if you do X, we might be in favor of it. But again, this is not something that I really am recommending we do. It's an option.
I personally think that the best option might be to draft these pointed resolutions as a board. That way we can maybe show some attempt at reaching out, but also to give these specific corrections and or advice that are narrowly tailored to these situations instead of doing a large general vote of no confidence. I don't know if the rest of the board agrees, but I think narrowly tailored resolutions to these proposals might be the best way to go, especially since other constituent bodies on campus are doing the same thing.
Does grad council, will they be meeting the first Thursday of this upcoming December?
Probably, yeah.
So are we looking at bringing a resolution from the floor to graduate council?
That's not my call. That's all of you guys.
Okay, well, I would just like to say in that I actually concur in Derek's opinion. And so I think that that matter should be before the body to discuss that now.
Okay.
I have an opinion, as usual. So I am somewhat on board with you all in saying that we should kind of play the respectable politics game. My question is, at what point did we wait too long? Because what is the saying? Frog doesn't know it's being boiled alive. Is that, like, I don't know if that's what's happening to us. And so it just seems like we should have a conversation about strategy, because if we wait too long, what does the vote of no confidence say if it's already passed the 90 article days?
Well, I don't think that there is a time limit on diplomacy. I think that acting in a manner of diplomacy is always the correct way to go.
I think we should, in my opinion, looking at what is happening with Faculty Senate, I think that it would be perfectly appropriate for us to channel this through Graduate Council with a resolution from the floor. This gives us time to develop that if we are meeting on that first Thursday of December. And I think that we can collectively come as an executive committee with something to address on our next meeting on November 28th before that December meeting. So we could be able to present that to you, collaborate together, and move forward with a resolution from the floor so that it's in alignment with those other constituencies on campus. I think this would meet the needs, especially of the graduate, all the graduate professional students that we are representing, as well as our law students. And certainly within this 90-day time frame, we can, if, as Jonathan said, if we are not heard, if our messages of our diplomatic messages are not received, then yes, that is still a card to play. But I don't think we have to play that card yet.
To be clear, and I'm going to repeat this ad nauseum, my responsibility is to provide all of the available options to this body so that you guys can vote on a given option. Our options are statements, resolutions, mandates only bind to us, so not that, statements, resolutions, the vote of no confidence, advocacy within our committees, resolutions where to other bodies where we have the authority to present resolutions. As president, I am not advocating for any one of these options. I am presenting them so that you guys are aware of the range of things that you can do. Which one this body decides to do will be a matter of, well, voting or other such policies where appropriate. So, to be clear, if you guys don't want to do a vote of no confidence, I am not forcing you guys to do anything. It's my responsibility to present the option.
Can we get maybe a committee started to work on this between now and our next meeting to maybe draft some kind of resolution that we would maybe want to vote on next meeting and then propose maybe at the grad council meeting or however we want to do that?
Is that a motion?
I motion that.
So, point of information real quick. Specifically, what is the nature of a resolution or resolutions that we're talking about for bringing to graduate council, either on the floor or otherwise? Because there was a number of things that were brought up. And so I don't know if we're talking about a collection of options that we would pursue as far as a resolution, or if there's a specific one that we're talking about.
I don't have a specific one in mind.
Do you want me to speak to that, Clyde?
I mean, you can, it's an open question.
Could I
I'm not sure specifically what we're talking about, or if we're talking about essentially things that have been coming up is the notion of the position for a categorical elimination of departments, the policy regime change for instructors of record, and potentially a vote of no confidence.
Can we take that off the table, just so we stop
Yeah,
talking
no, that's
about
fine. I just wanted to know, so in part, because I am continuing working on the issue related to instructors of record, and so as I continue to organize meetings and things like that related to that issue, I want to know what it is that we're working on.
Well,
'Cause
so
it's-
from,
Hold on a second.
so I thought that that's what you were just talking about though. I mean, maybe that you were talking about the instructors of record, is that?
That's where that conversation started, but it
Yeah,
seemed
that's what it seemed to me too.
We
is
talked
that's
about
what-
3 things.
Yeah, it seemed
Right.
to cross over into other
2025,
things.
instructors of
Right,
record,
so-
and then the restructuring itself.
What are we addressing? What is our goal to
The
accomplish?
agenda item we're talking about right now
Yeah.
that prompted this is instructors of record. My question was, what do we want to do with regards to the instructor of record thing? As for the department thing, we had our first reading of a resolution for that, which I would argue is in action on behalf of this body to address the department thing. So we can check that off. The instructor of record thing, I did not draft a resolution. No other body has drafted a resolution, which is why I did not come with a set option for the body to consider, rather a range of options for the body to consider, with exception to vote of no confidence, because off the table. So the current agenda item is instructors of record. If we want to revisit, say, the department thing, somebody would have to make a motion to revisit item C on our agenda, but right now we're talking about instructors of record and what do we want to do about them.
I think it's very important to, if we're going to send something to the Faculty Association or the Graduate Council, to be focused on the issue of instructors of record, since that's it independent from the rest of the organization plan. And I think it could be crucial to establish that they are either in solidarity with graduate students and graduate student instructors or not, to know who potential allies are. Also related to that, has the graduate union at all, have they issued any sort of statement on this issue of instructors of record?
Yes, we've had meetings with the provost. I'm setting up a meeting with the chancellor, and it'd be directly regarding these issues. I think once we do have that finalized communication, especially with the chancellor, we then will proceed forward as representing all graduate students. We've been, I guess, following and trying to understand the numbers of who could potentially be impacted, as Jonathan said, how many percentages are actually instructors of record, how would that impact, and also graduation rates, because if you think about it, one thing that would also do is they would eliminate any instructor of record or any graduate assistant teaching any upper level courses. This might even include 200 level, but definitely will include 300 level courses. And if that is not covered, as Jonathan said, by an NTT or another faculty member, then that course will not be offered to undergraduate students. And I think that would be impactful on multiple levels. And so we will be addressing lots of these issues. But I also encourage you, if there's things that you'd like us to bring up, if there's something that we have not discussed that you've been pondering and thinking that would really alter these conversations on our favor, please feel free to send me an email as I begin preparing for those conversations. But I like to bring up,
I think Ann brings up a good point that we should address graduate instructors of record independently, not only so we can figure out who our allies are, but also to determine, also because I feel like we're at a point where we have to strategize what we ask for, and I'm not entirely sure that we can ask for a whole lot of change and restructuring and things like that. And so to isolate the one thing that affects us more than anything might be useful. But I think that we also, so going back to the conversation of like diplomacy, I'm not bringing up that we do a vote of no confidence. But I think we need to think about who our audience is, because to me it seems like no matter what we do, graduate students are not seen as being diplomatic either way. And so maybe there's something we can do to address that, or maybe these are just thoughts that I have running through my head. It seems like a resolution will also not be read as diplomatic if the audience is the chancellor. If the audience, however, is the other governing bodies or other students or other peoples on campus, that might be a different story. So when we write the resolution, I think we have to think about who is the audience.
Actually, if we could hold on a moment, I think, okay, if we write a resolution, because I was about to say, I don't think we've actually concretely decided
Yes.
on whether or not we should write a resolution.
I'd like to make a motion that we, I don't know if we need to necessarily form a subcommittee, but that a resolution be formed and presented at our next upcoming meeting on November 28th.
Second. Okay, so the motion is to draft a resolution or form a committee to draft a resolution? Because these are two separate issues.
I think that it would be more effective just to draft the resolution. Not
Okay,
necessarily to form a committee. I think that we could do that as far as the executive council.
okay. So the motion is to draft a resolution for our next GPSC meeting to address the graduate students as instructor of record issue. All in favor? All opposed? All right, so we will draft a resolution for our next GPSC meeting. To be clear, in terms of timing, our next meeting, I believe, is November 28th. Graduate Council's next meeting is Thursday, December 7th. So we will have drafted said resolution and had the second reading of the resolution about departments in advance of Graduate Council's last meeting for the semester. After the December 7th meeting, they do not meet again until February 1st. Yeah. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. Officer and committee reports. Clay.
Yeah. All right. So from Grad Council, there's a number of resolutions that were passed. One was passed for the approval of an accelerated Master's of Science concentration in applied psychology, with the subsequent approval of a non-thesis option for their MA. There was the approval of an online MBA concentration in business analytics. There was the approval of modifications to the policy allowing for the exemption of TOEFL requirements and how certain exemptions are accepted for both students that are applying with a bachelor's degree as well as a master's degree. And the last resolution passed approving a change to the credit hour requirements for accelerated master's programs to allow for 9 hours of undergraduate work counted towards the master's degree to apply towards a total of 21 hours that are required for the completion of the degree. Moving on to graduate college affairs. So one issue related to travel funding requests and applications. So, in the case that your department expects or is not offering funding for travel reimbursement, I've been instructed to give notice for you to inform your departments to still submit an application, nonetheless. So this cannot be stressed enough, to still have the application submitted, that other funds and arrangements and additional units of the university may have funds for your expenses. And so this is in addition and sort of independent of those GPSC has to offer. So in short, make sure your department submits the application regardless of its expectation to provide or not provide funding for any travel reimbursement expenses. Have them submit it up through all the other administrative mechanisms. Also, I got notice that the this year's graduate school fundraising advisory committee has been put on hold for the time being. So this is a hold for those of you that asked for nominations to it. It may be put back on, and you'll be provided notice at such time. Oh, no, Steven's here actually. So. Fiscal year 19 budgets were released to the colleges. These are tentative projected budgets, as the state has not had any allocation of funds for the next year, right? So there is no official state budget. These are projected ones. The budgets are addressed to the colleges, departments, and units as they exist currently. GA budgets are comparable to this year's fiscal budget. But as we mentioned earlier, quote, modest changes because I've anticipated instructor of record changes. Deans have been instructed that they're able to commit up to 75% of GA funds prior to knowing the final budgets. Again, this is to units as they exist currently, which in some ways is a little weird.
Clay, before you go much further, when you said that we should instruct our departments to still channel any travel funding request through the department and upwards, I was wondering if you might be able to, I think of my own office and some of the strong-minded staff there, and so is there any way that you can send us an email so that we can demonstrate that this is coming from the executive of Graduate Council and not just from our own lovely lips? It'd be very helpful.
Yes, 100%.
Thanks. Lots of giggles, obviously, in my department.
I will even,
It's funny because it's true. It's funny
I will
'cause
use
it's
the
true.
most official email signature I have
Thank you,
in
thank you.
said email, and yeah, I will get that out.
For the GPSC letterhead in your box, you know?
I mean, if you want to send something on GPSC letterhead.
We could send a memo actually to
Could you
to
also
every,
CC
yeah,
the
I think
meeting?
an inter-office memo would perhaps be even, yeah, that is
And then you
fun.
Because I do think that it really does fall on deaf ears sometimes if it just comes from me saying, no, this is really said in executive committee. Why don't you believe me?
So are we asking graduate council to send this memo, or do you want me to write a tersely worded memo to chairs and directors?
The source of that memo, give me a day or two to figure out, because potentially there's a stronger unit from which said memo could be delivered to
Okay.
departmental units. But yeah, at the end, yeah, I think we have the ability to do that and can express a rationale for doing so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
No, absolutely, that's a great comment. Also at Graduate Council, so law school affairs, Derek brought up some pressing concerns as to any university policy that would set a standard LSAT score relative to some kind of anticipated passage of the bar exam in the future. It did seem as though the chancellor sort of walked back from the idea of sort of any rigid standard that would be employed, and he seemed to try to communicate an intent that it was for scores and admittance relative to setting up students to succeed versus admitting students and exploiting them for tuition even though they weren't adequately prepared. Also, Jordan raised the question of budget projections and budget sources for TAs and RAs in the law school, being that they are currently not funded. Past and current policy is the provost unit does not actually issue a budget for those positions to the law school. However, with the law school's budget being brought under the university and the chancellor and Dr. Dalala acknowledged that this may be an area in which the new budget configuration provides the ability for that kind of a practice, and it seems as though it's making headway, that potentially there is an opportunity in which that will be the case and that those positions will receive maybe a funding allocation from the university itself for the next year.
Right.
Have I said that all correctly?
Yes. I talked to the provost and Dean Behan, and Behan said that he is cautiously optimistic that funding will be in place for the next semester.
Great, that's fantastic, congratulations.
Very, very cool stuff. Moving on.
Or will you be instructors of record?
No.
We don't want to be.
So, moving on to the issue of students as instructors of record. Forgive me if any of this is redundant. But in the meeting, the Chancellor said categorically the practice of having students as instructors of record will not continue. Quoting from the FAQ section of the reorganization website on this matter, we are making a change in course to ensure that we provide an extraordinary educational experience for all our students. Graduate students will continue to serve as teaching assistants under the mentorship of a faculty member. However, graduate students will not serve as instructors of record, who have the independent responsibility for creating and delivering courses, including making determinations about which students may enroll in the course, what instructional materials are used, and what grade the students will receive. This change in approach is not due to reorganization, but the need to ensure that all our undergraduate students receive the best education possible, and that our graduate students who are involved in classroom instruction have strong mentorship and supervision. So adding on top of this, the status is generally presented as one that is not appropriate for students or the university. In that sense, it is presented as such that it is inappropriate both for undergraduates and graduate students. In that context being the educational product of the university, either in the sense of the quality and effectiveness in instruction for undergraduates, as well as the sort of training and educational experience of graduate students themselves. The intent seems to be to replace it with a practice of supervised instruction. Under such a thing, it has been described as faculty would be on record. Faculty would develop the curriculum, syllabus, and texts. Faculty would hold final responsibility of grades. Now, I'm not sure if that's limited to the course grade at the end of a term, or if that would also include all grades throughout the entirety of the course. That has not exactly been specified. Faculty would supervise the instruction students provide in the course. Students would not hold final pedagogical, administrative, or curricular authority. And the Chancellor has made mention of this affected only 40 students in that meeting, but we have conflicting information that sounds like it's coming from GAU, which
Yes.
is awesome.
No, huge conflicting. I mean,
Yeah.
just the English department alone has that many. Just the English department, not including any other department on campus.
Actually, the Department of Education has 40, the English department has 80, the
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
College of Engineering has
Appreciate
like 32, and then it's broken down in a bunch of other areas.
Yeah, as an aside, if you can forward that over to me as I continue
Sure.
to pursue
I'd be happy to
that,
do
that
that.
would be awesome. So, yeah,
Em has a question.
yes.
Do NTT instructors on campus do sort of their own separate contract negotiations? Is there a union that represents just NTT instructors?
Yes, there is. And it's also the same entity that represents graduate students. It's the same entity that represents our faculty, and that's the IEA.
Are they represented by the faculty senate?
NTT faculty have a voting block on the faculty senate, so yes.
So they're, not to imply that there would be kind of a conflict of interest as far as like them advocating for us. That I presume that would be somewhat of an issue that we would need to advocate for ourselves. in this matter.
It depends, and I can't speak with any authority on that matter, because they did take up the issue of grad students as instructors of record in the way that I described. So I'm certain. I would like to think that the faculty senate would advocate on behalf of the graduate students that they're teaching, mentoring, working with, but I don't know. I haven't actually sat down with the faculty senate president and asked her directly, will you have our backs on this? So I can't give you a for certain answer, but my feeling is yes. They would have our backs, but I cannot provide a certain answer to that.
Well, and what I was thinking was, could we pretty easily show that to hire NTT faculty at a fixed rate determined by negotiations with the representative union would cost considerably more than allocating GA funding for teachers if we had to replace so many classes with
We don't
Tenured instructor?
we don't actually need to prove that point. It's point blank demonstrate, or it's point blank, like there, right? You have to pay NTT's benefits. You don't have to pay us benefits. We get the student health center, and because we're students, so NTTs are generally more expensive than GAs. It's not something that we really need to prove, but we could.
Okay, so we don't have to make an argument of look at us, we're easier to exploit. That's already.
No.
If you want to put it that way, sure.
And GAU, you know, because these are other constituents that we care about on campus, we respect NTTs, and so we try to be definitely cautious and aware of our language choices and how we identify ourselves against or with them. And so I think that's something we have to take into strong consideration. But I will say that in my meetings with Provost Dalala, that when asking about, I guess, the cause or the reason behind this, it really was simply the philosophy of one person. There is no empirical data that proves that this was even brought up as a complaint by any students, that it was you know, that it would even help increase enrollment or anything like that. There's nothing there except for the opinion of one man. And so I also asked if there are ICE reports, which are instructional course evaluations, what the comparison between those ICE reports might be between a graduate student versus an NTT, and that is not there as evidence. And I would probably bet and gamble that they're similar, if not. I mean, I know I particularly, as well as my colleagues, we do get great ICE scores, and it's because we have pedagogical courses that teach us how to behave and approach our students at their level in the classroom. Also, I want to note that most NTTs are, not to say anything against our master's students in the room, but a lot of them do have only master's degrees, so technically I'm actually more educated than them as a PhD student, and I have a larger degree of education. And I could be close to graduating, I could be literally going into the market one semester later, but would not be able to teach on record here, even though I'm fairly qualified to do so, and I have years of experience doing so. And so I think there's other things that need to be taken into consideration, and I would love for anybody to help us write that resolution. I'm kind of eager to write the resolution myself. I know John has so much on his plate, but there's a lot to be said, and so it's interesting as we get more information that really, because I asked him, well, what's the purpose of this? And it was just he said that the chancellor just sees it as a marketing opportunity to say that every course on campus is taught by a faculty member. Now that would be a blatant lie. Because when I asked, well, how are they, I was like, is that true? Or would I still be doing all the labor, except for they would receive that credit? If there were ICE reports, it potentially could just go to them, even though I'm the one in the classroom dedicating my time. I'm a speech instructor, so if there's a conflict of it, like, you know, a grievance against a grade that was a speech, how are they even going to be able to see that, and what would happen in the classroom as it happened? You know, if someone bombed a speech, they bombed a speech, and they could complain about it, and they could even turn in the draft of their speech, but it would not address what happened in that moment. And I think that it doesn't align with several different programs on campus. And also thinking about how many core classes are taught by graduate students. I mean, this to me is it just does not align with his also mission of now increasing graduate enrollment, of having 300 versus 100 students graduating per year with their graduate degrees. It just doesn't add up.
The other thing I would say, this is not true of all disciplines, I know, but for those that it is true of, one of the big benefits that we have with our grad students going out into the world is that teaching as instructor of record, as the pedagogical final say in a course, that you can go out and show you have the syllabus, that you have the ICE reports, that you have all these things. We don't have that. SIU puts out, at least in some cases and in some departments, really qualified teachers. If we don't have that, that takes away one of the things that, for those of us who have, let's say less than optimal job markets, one of the things that we get to bring to the table. Why would we choose to be here then if we can't also reap that benefit? But are they gonna make things switch over so that we're publishing more? I think how's that going to work, right? That's the other thing. That's the trade-off.
I'm sorry, Lauren, and then we're go to you.
Yeah, that's actually a question that I asked the chancellor in grad council, and his response to me essentially was, well, why would I let you teach at this institution? Do you have a job? So these are things that get brought to his attention, and he just seems to think that because a third-year PhD student does not have a tenure track job, that is proof enough why we shouldn't be allowed to teach. So it's also evidence of what Diana's saying, that it is one man's philosophy, because he can't seem to defend it. And other people at graduate council also retorted with, well, NTT people have been teaching longer, but they don't ever address the fact that someone has to start in their first year teaching, and they don't have years ahead of that. So
NTTs would have potentially a tenure track job. That's literally what defines them.
I'm going to turn the floor. You had your hand raised.
Just when it comes to the resolution, just in terms of numbers, with the English department, you said there's 80, and each of us has 2 sections that we're teaching because we have 2 core classes that we have to teach to every undergrad. So every one of those 80 people is teaching 40 students. I don't know how they would possibly staff.
I don't understand that either, especially since if they get rid of department chairs, now we are allocating these duties to these professors that are probably not going to hire any other additional faculty level professors because of this budget, because of our budget and our desire to save $2.3 million. And so I feel that this would stress our current faculty. I think that it would prolong our opportunity for our graduate students to graduate, because if you shorten the pool, if graduate students who now have been here into their 3rd year, 4th year, and they are no longer able to teach those upper level courses, then they might be out. They may not have the funding that they would have had if they were able to teach those courses, if they want to draw in new graduate students to meet those numbers that the chancellor is projecting or wanting, and that 300 graduates a year.
From the Diversity Council, what the Chancellor does talk about a lot is recruitment. So I think that funding, this is a huge place where students get funding. So I guess I don't understand either why.
His recruitment is focused on it. This is an undergraduate focus model, because I don't see how you can successfully recruit and want to go back to an R1 rated institution and deny opportunities for instructors of record. But anyways, we've talked on this for a while. Any other comments?
I mean, this is what? You got anything else, Clay?
I do.
I'm so sorry, Clay.
I have some more things, yes. I'm finished with good news, for what it's worth. But yes, so a number of things that I'll sort of paraphrase and then kick back into what I have here is that the exploitation angle doesn't really work, because that's specifically been brought up by the chancellor in the sense of that he doesn't like it because he sees it as exploitative, in the sense of either keeping graduate students so that they can teach these courses, or leveling too much of a requirement in the sense of taking on all of the responsibility of teaching a course completely independent of advisement or guidance or mentorship or whatever is exploitative. And so it's not really gonna be a very good tack. In addition to that, I think in the sense of the ways in which we choose to move forward in addressing this and taking a position and advocating for it, that there are some concerns, because there is a lot of changes that are being proposed, and those constituency groups that we might rely on and potentially can rely on to help us in those advocacies are also going to be picking those things that they are going to have the most investment in and the things that they can let slide. So there is the potential in which, for instance, faculty will let slide taking a hard stance on things like instructors of record, because it does affect specific units more than sort of as a categorical whole of the university. So issues about faculty reorganization, departmental units versus no departmental units, and then this issue, which can frankly be handled completely independent of all of those reorganizational aspects. And so putting together the coalition of persons in a way that can act most efficaciously to protect these has been something that I've been approaching in a very conscious and sensitive manner. Those persons that we can rely on. And so I'll speak to that. In that sense, right? With all these changes, graduate students are still described as teaching courses, however. So graduate students will teach courses, but just not as of record. So it's some kind of alternative in which supervision functions as a mentoring process and/or a check against inadequate preparation for and/or delivery of instruction to students enrolled in courses. So however, what exactly this process looks like, what policy or policies will codify it, how those changes in practice will affect the experience, development, professionalization, matriculation, and ultimately the placement of graduate students remains equally, categorically unspecified. So those are all things that were just brought up in our discussion. So I'm taking this proposed policy change seriously. I am currently pursuing many answers and as much explanation on the matters as I can obtain. So this includes reaching out to administrative actors. I'm also reaching out to graduate studies directors, as the graduate studies directors who manage the graduate programs that will be impacted by this kind of a policy change are a pretty strong stake in the development, matriculation, and placement of their students. And that is so far shown rather beneficial approach. So my ideal would be for some executive administrative parties pertinent to any such policy change, graduate student directors of affected programs, GPSC representatives of the affected units, as well as potentially GAU to hold a joint meeting in which the details, implications, effects, and complications of policy changes of this nature are brought into focus. In turn, I would hope that these parties would actually engage in a negotiation of any final policy and its implementation whereby the standing policy is nullified or otherwise changed. I believe that more than anything, with all the nuance, program to program, unit to unit, how it actually is a part of the educational training and experience, that's all taken into account in any sort of change and consideration. Also, I wanted to make a comment related to the past affairs at the Graduate Council meeting. So during questions and comments portions of the Council's agenda, again, there were problems of overt contention and hostility towards graduate students and our fellow GPSC representatives. This is a continuing problem, that which I feel is hardly news to this body, perhaps the SIU community generally. The neglect in communication with GPSC and derision when in communication have characterized far too much of the administration's interaction and engagement with, in particular, GPSC officials. It is not only disappointing and impeding, but certainly problematic and outside any continuum of what's tolerable, not just of those acting in and on behalf of SIU in an official capacity, but any and all persons, unequivocally. Insofar, our work must continue, and challenges, changes, and negotiation over the direction of SIU and its advantages or disadvantages for graduate and professional students remains in question, and therefore high priority. I will offer as much as this, if not more, when the need arises. The officers of GPSC, and I would trust those we represent, are here for you and stand in support of you. In the event you are derided, intimidated, or scorned in your capacity as a GPSC representative, in your capacity as a graduate or professional student of this university, please reach out to others around you you trust, can count on for support, and will stand on your behalf without reservation. And count among those GPSC. So, in the next executive committee meeting for Graduate Council, I'll actually be absent. So John will be filling in for me there as a proxy. And I look forward to your notes. So, some quick aspects on Diversity and Inclusivity Policy Committee. I will make this go as quickly as possible. So there was a couple of resolutions, unless you want me to summarize them, that came out of Faculty Senate's Executive Council. We are looking to develop aligned actions through GPSC. In effect, we're looking at developing reports on the units that were mentioned: Africana Studies, Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and Latino and Latin American Studies. And we are focusing on what their unit mission, vision, stakeholdership, needs, and contributions, either current or potential, are. And we're going to deliberate that in our next meeting on November 29th. We seek to propose new initiatives and prioritization for these areas, whether those are new programs, certificates, concentrations, commensurate support. All of these things we're sort of putting on the table. Also, I provided the draft of the graduate student survey for comment, and getting comments back from the DNI November 20th. And the last thing, the good news.
Oh.
So the graduate student survey that I've been working on so far this semester, the draft has been completed and submitted to ARC. Ongoing is a negotiation of the terms of the agreement with ARC, and a final term of agreement has been scheduled for delivery and execution tomorrow, so hopefully you're around to sign that so we can get that done. We're also negotiating supplemental funding to support that effort. We're pursuing a collaboration with Student Affairs area as it's related to the employment of the findings in the survey, basically making more actionable the improvements that we can glean from the data that we get in the survey. We're also developing a schedule of data comparisons to produce the report with, and we have completed the work on a representational comparison file. Basically, I gathered some census data for the enrollment, and so now we're able to monitor how representational and how many of you are participating in it by college, and therefore like different demographic characteristics. So I do have a request to make. I would like to set up college level coordinators to monitor those response rates, or I guess I should say more specifically, as those response rates are monitored, that I have someone that is coordinating the effort for getting participation in the survey to help me coordinate the efforts to solicitate more if we have certain aspects of how we're getting participation that are problematic. So I'll circulate a little sheet around for it. And if you could sign up, at least one person for every college would be great. And I'll go forward from there. And once I have such a list, I'll give some instructions and additional information thereafter. In waiting, we're looking to ARC to finish the build out of the instrument itself, as well as provide the evaluation and revision of the instrument by ARC. Projected timeline for it, the review and revision of the survey likely completed by November 22nd. Open the survey for participation as potential and probable for November 27th, and a potential close of data collection December 18th. And the anticipated completion of analysis and the delivery of the final report to GPSC in January 15th, or January 15th. 2018.
One of the things about that survey I want to make clear is the institution has never engaged in a comprehensive collection of graduate student feedback regarding our experiences at this institution. Every survey vehicle has been designed from an undergraduate basis, and I would know. I sat on the committees that designed some of them. So this is the first time that we are literally collecting institutional data about graduate student experiences at this institution, and this is the first time that the questions being asked are specific to our experiences. So I know I tend to ask you guys to do a lot of things, but this is something that I really want you to do because there are a couple ways to make the institution do things. One is through large amounts of data, and the other is through protests. And it's getting too cold for protests, so please, 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 for the love of God, do the surveys, right? Just as an aside, graduate students had the highest response rate outside of faculty on the Diversity Council survey. So do this one too. Diana?
Is that it for you, Clyde?
That is it.
Okay, all right, well then moving on to the fee allocation board. The fee allocation board met with two organizations prior to this meeting. One organization was Anthropology Graduate Student Association. They will be hosting the AGSA Anthropology Speaker Series. They have requested $300 from GPSC, and that is also the amount that we recommend. So I motion that we support their request of $300.
Is that the only request you got?
No, I got another one. Yeah, I guess I can do that at the same time. But
Bus them, please.
oh well, let's just okay. Yes. Okay. Fine. The other organization was the Student Bar Association, and they're going to be hosting the Barristers Ball. This will be taking place in the spring, just as well as the Anthropology Speaker Series. They are requesting from GPSC a total of $3,000. Based on a recommendation, we recommend $2,500 as a contribution to this event. So now I bring individually to a motion or both to a motion?
Both to motion.
Both to a motion works for me. I motion that we support both of these events based on the recommendations of the FAB committee. 300 going to the Anthropology and Graduate Student Association, and 2,500 going to the Student Bar Association. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
Can I go to the SBA Barristers Ball where you guys have like fancy wines and stuff?
It is very possible.
Oh, yeah.
You can be my second date.
Yes, tickets are available. All right, well, thank you. That's all I had, and I guess the other thing is now that the motion is passed, as far as the differences, or the 2575, I will be setting up a meeting with Lauren Stetler, with the fiscal officer for USG, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. She already knows that that email's coming, and that way we can talk about how to move forward and see how quickly we can get those funds channeled to us. I will let you know that the FAC committee has already been in discussion, or we're aware of this, and how we potentially can allocate that money once it is received. All right, so that's it for me.
Okie dokie. So for me, yeah, this will be real fast. So we have a couple of upcoming administrative searches. We're going to be looking for a new assistant dean of students because Lori Stetler's shop got 9 new units. The associate chancellor for institutional diversity search has not resumed, and this is actually getting to be pretty problematic given contractual limitations on the interim associate chancellor for institutional diversity. We are looking for a provost for enrollment management. I have no idea where that search is, nor have I been solicited for folks to sit on that committee, nor have we heard anything about the search for a new provost. Right now we have 2 assistant co-provosts. The chancellor said that he wanted to find a provost by like July. If he wants to do that, that search committee needs to get started immediately at the beginning of next semester to provide a good faith search that would enable student input. I've heard nothing about that. Item B, student code of conduct review. Yeah, student code of conduct will be up for review next semester. This is one of those things that I reached out to you guys for like reps on, and then was told by Lori, we're not doing that until next semester. You're too far ahead of the game. Well, now I'm not ahead of the game anymore. So yeah, that's going to be reviewed next semester. Item C, taxes and tuitions waiver. All right, so I have to be extremely clear about this because of the EEOC. GPSC cannot use university materials to advocate for a specific political objective. We can, however, provide information concerning the effects of policy on our student experience. Please contact your local representatives for more information. I've reached out to John Charles and the rest of the administration about this matter. They were caught as off guard by this as we were and are scrambling to develop their own responses, including lobbying and legislation. I will keep you updated as more information comes through the administration. I will also post the policy briefs and other information received from the Council of Graduate Schools and the information communicated to me by Dean Lee, because if Dean Lee can email it to me through SIU, I'm fairly certain it's not in violation of EEOC. So I will put that up on the the GPSC website. And send those documents out over our listserv for you guys to distribute to the reps. There is an item that is not on here, but I feel the need to talk about it because USG talked about it earlier. Student honor code.
Oh, can I interrupt you? I know that you were saying that you wanted to be informative without being engaging in call to action. Is everyone informed about the impact of that tax reform? Is everybody up to date with that? Does anybody have any questions? Because what that will do is that will look at your tuition waivers as taxable income. And so, yes,
The administrative positions are already taxable.
yes.
Yeah. The AP, okay, there's a distinction there, right? So my job, I get taxed for that. Clay and Diana don't. You guys aren't admins. Yeah, I'm sorry. That tax is separate from what we're talking about. This would be a tax on your tuition waiver. So your tuition waiver would be counted as income and therefore taxable,
Yeah,
not your stipend.
yeah. So your
It's
stipend,
already not the research or teaching ones, but the general ones are already taxed.
Your waiver is counted
Yes.
as your income?
My waiver is taxed.
for administrative GA position.
Well, that's news. I thought our
Some.
stipends-
Katie, yes.
So wait, this
At least
is,
some
I've
administration.
been reading about it, I mean, it's just the House version of the bill, the Senate version of the bill that was released, I think, this week does not include this,
Mhm.
which is good-ish news.
Yes, yeah.
So it just depends on what version eventually gets passed.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
we'll keep you informed. I just want to make sure everybody knew what we were talking about before we moved on.
Yeah. The Council of Grad Schools brief contains information about both of them, so I will make that available as soon as possible. So again, the item that's not on here, student honor code. The chancellor directed the associate provost Chevalier to direct USG to come up with a student honor code that would functionally outline expectations for students. I received an invitation from President Bowens to participate in the development of the honor code. So let me be clear about this. This honor code is not intended to be a supplement to the student code of conduct, and as such, it is not enforceable by institutional policy. So if you violate the student honor code, there's nothing they can do to you. To that end, I do not think this is a valuable use of GPSC's resources to engage in essentially the production of a document that is neither enforceable nor intended to apply to graduate students. It is my feeling that the only reason we're getting the invitation is because I said, if you're going to develop an honor code and expect it to apply to us, you need to have us at the table. But at the same time, if you can't enforce it using institutional policy, where is the point? So it is my position that this would not be a productive use of GPSC resources, but I have not responded in any official capacity because I wanted to leave it up to this body. So,
Motion to ignore the inapplicable policy?
okay, so there is a motion.
Sorry, I got my evil laugh. I apologize.
All right, wow. So there is a motion to ignore the request to participate in the development of an inapplicable policy. All in favor? All opposed? Is there a question?
We're sure that this is not something that will be enforced upon us.
I spoke to Lori Stetler, and she said this is coming from the academic side of the house, and she has no knowledge of the development of this thing. In her understanding, it cannot be enforced by student rights and responsibilities. If you want me to get that in writing from all related administrators, sure. But in our meeting with Lisette, she said it's not something that they can enforce.
But then she also referred to it as a living document, and so I'm just like, to me it means it can change.
Fair enough, and I would say that once it gets buy-in from Lori Stetler's shop and SR as something that is enforceable as university policy, then GPSC might have a say in it. But right now, nobody who's responsible for holding us accountable for our conduct says that this has any teeth. And we have too many other things to worry about. But
I'm fine voting to ignore the thing. I think that was the right move. I just want to make sure that I think it's a good idea to get it in writing.
okay, so
And I would just like to say that, please? Lindy has a lot of experience with working within the institution and writing documents here, and she's saying that if they call it living, that means it can change.
Yeah, I would definitely get it in writing.
Okay,
100%.
so in my response, I will request in writing the limitations of this thing and say GPSC, until this becomes a policy that can be enforced by insert institutional arms here, and there's a long list of them, because if they're going to hold us to this, grad council has to sign off on it, SR has to sign off on it, individual departments have to sign off on it, faculty senate has to sign off on it, because we are teachers, because we teach, and because the way in which these things are enforced upon it functions differently. Until they get all of those approvals, GPSC won't participate. Does that work better? Sweet. I get to write a terse letter. You gotta find your joy where it happens. So before we get to committee updates, actually no, this will be in roundtable discussion. So GPSC reps committee updates. Nope. Okay, roundtable.
Oh, sorry, I was just waiting for the roundtable.
Okay, roundtable discussion. Before you get to that, there's one thing that I actually wanted to talk about, and that's the limits of GPSC authority for policy making decisions. Again, at the outset of the meeting, I provided you with several options for how we could respond to policy decisions. Those are all live options, but we're not obligated to select a given option. And any option we do select should be in reference to the wider context of the other constituency groups. That is not to say that GPSC should not take independent action, but any action that is not limited specifically to this body, we need to keep in mind the larger context of the institution. That being said, as I said at the outset of the meeting, as president, it is my responsibility to lay all available options on the table. Should the body choose an option, I will provide the best possible input I can on it, but ultimately, I am not a dictator. I cannot say GPSC is doing a thing without your consent. So my provision of options is just that. If there is a recommended option that I believe this body should take, I will say so at the outset. There is that. The second thing is, insofar as you guys are all representatives of GPSC, some of you have more or less institutional authority, but you are still representatives of GPSC. So if you decide at some point you're going to push the chancellor off a cliff with a bulldozer, I would appreciate a heads up so that I can say, yes, I'm sitting in the passenger seat as they are driving the chancellor off the cliff. Now this is, you guys chuckle at this, but one of the easiest ways to discredit anything that we do here is to paint us as a rogue organization or not acting in the collective interest of the graduate and professional student community. Which is to say that, again, if you're gonna drive the chancellor or anyone else off a cliff with a bulldozer, I would appreciate a heads up so that I can tell you, no, don't do that. There are better ways, or here are the keys, go right ahead. The same applies to your interactions with any other constituency group. If you have an issue with another constituency group, before you decide to hold them accountable, please, 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 for the love of God, let me know so that I can address it as a constituency head, right? This is not saying that you cannot take independent actions, but if you take independent actions under your authority as a representative of GPSC in whatever arena, please, please, please let me know so that when an angry administrator, faculty member, other constituency member says, how dare you allow them to do this, and I have no knowledge of this, I would have to disavow it. I'd be like, I don't know what they did or why. I did not give them, I have no idea. If you let me know, I can say, yes, I approve of this action, and here is why. And here's why you should approve of it. So all I'm asking is, just as a courtesy, let me know before you decide to burn the place down. All right, so.
Well, and also, even in the context of not burning the place down, let us know what you're doing, this particular tax that you're taking, all of that. Also in the context of, so that we don't get some kind of message coming back to us like, you got to get control of X, Y, or Z, or whatever this person's doing, and it's very outside the bounds of what is an accurate representation of what someone is actually done. And we can say, you know, if we're familiar with what's being done, then we can say, well, that's not actually how that's happened. That's not my understanding of it. That's not the conversations I've been having with this individual. You know, and so we're not caught off guard by what is potentially, you know, less than precise representations of all of our actions.
Okie dokie. Item A, and then I'll let you get your. The Graduate Student Mentorship Symposium. I have been asked by Dean Lee to co-moderate the Graduate Student Mentorship Symposium on, November 28th. Lauren will be sitting on the panel. The intention behind this panel is to discuss graduate student mentorship at this institution and the available or the varying ways that it takes place and the available mechanisms whereby mentorship is accomplished. I was asked by Dean Lee to advertise this. I will do so again via email. Attend if you wish. There's that. Diana.
Okay, I just realized that there was something I forgot in my report. I just wanted to give you updates on remaining balances. Right now, we do have quite a bit left in our travel funding, so I encourage you, if you're in this room and you've gone to a conference and or presented at a conference, please make sure to apply for that travel funding. And or if you have colleagues within your department that you know have been going to conferences, make sure that they access that on our website. So there's $15,175 left in travel funding. So please take advantage of that, encourage others to take advantage of that. We also do have $5,375.77 left in our event funding remaining for the spring. So that's that. But I highly, highly encourage you to take advantage of that travel funding because we are one of the only that are offering that. So take advantage of it.
So other announcements? No. I am working on the calendar thing. I'm still working on it, in spite of all the other insanity. Seeing there are no other announcements, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, you guys are good.